Students, welcome to my YouTube channel. We will start doing VOR, ADF, RMI questions from RK Bali. These questions are very important from the point of view of CPL, ATPL exams. So let's start solving the sums. Question 24. Aircraft VOR is tuned to a station when 049 is selected on OBS. The deviation bar becomes centered and to and from indicators indicates to. Aircraft radial and heading to reach the station is what? So here they have told you that aircraft VOR is tuned to a station, VOR station, and there is OBS selector. In the OBS selector, you have selected 049 bearing. The deviation bar after that becomes centered and to and from indicates to. What is the aircraft radial on which it is situated and what will be the heading to fly towards the station. Now, before doing this sum, let's revise some basics. So, let's say this is your VOR. This is your VOR station. Okay. This is the north datum. Okay. Next. Now, I am taking here radial 090, which emanates or starts from the VOR. The job of a radial is to take you away from a VOR, is to take you away from a VOR. Okay, that is the point number one. Very important point. Radials are meant to take you away from a VOR station or to take you outbound from a VOR station. So when we say you are flying particular radial, you are flying a particular radial, that means you are flying outbound. You are flying outbound from a station, unless in the question it is explicitly mentioned that you are flying homebound or inbound or towards the station. Okay, so flying a radial means you are flying away from a station. So these two important statements are given here. Okay, so radial takes you away from the VOR station, and when you fly a radial, you are flying outbound from a VOR station. Now, whenever we talk about VOR station, which is a ground equipment, there is a corresponding airborne equipment, which is your OBS, which is your OBS selector. Now, in this OBS selector, you can give an input of the bearing you want to fly. Meaning, if you want to fly outbound from a VOR station, you can put the radial in this. If you want to fly inbound, you can put the reciprocal of that particular radial in this. Apart from that, there is a CDI needle. Okay, there is a CDI needle which moves left or right from this center position, which moves left or right from this center position, okay, which has the ability to move left or right from the center position, meaning you are left or right of the radial center line, of the airway or that particular radial. Also, you have a provision for the information of to or from, of to or from shown in the OBS selector. So these three pieces of data are reflected in the OBS selector. One is what you input. Okay, give an input in the OBS selector, the radial, the bearing. Second, accordingly the CDI needle will move left or right, and then accordingly the to and from indication will show either to or from indication. Now, coming back to this illustration, if your aeroplane is flying outbound from this particular VOR, if your aeroplane is flying outbound from a particular VOR, this particular VOR, so what radial is it flying on? So let's write here. The aircraft is flying on radial 090. Aircraft is flying on radial 090. It is flying outbound. It is flying outbound. Next very important point is that VORs are only concerned about your position. It is not at all related to your aircraft heading. Whatever your aircraft heading may be, the position of aircraft on that particular radial of VOR will be reflected on this OBS selector. So heading plays no role in case of VOR OBS selector. So flying outbound, next VOR is concerned only concerned about your position on the radial. Position on the radial. Now over here aircraft is flying on radial 090 and it is flying outbound. So the OBS setting. So as a pilot, what setting will you put in the OBS selector? You will select radial 090. So you will put radial 090 in the OBS selector. So there is a knob on the side of this equipment. There is a knob on which is written OBS. So rotating this knob, you can bring 090 on the top position. Okay. So 090 on the top position. I have written it here for simplicity. So the radial aircraft is situated is 090. It is flying outbound on that radial. So I have put 090 here. Next, if aircraft is situated correctly on the radial like here, if it is flying on the center line of that radial, the CDI needle, the CDI needle, okay, so the CDI needle will stay in the center. The CDI needle will stay in the center, meaning as long as you are on the center line of the radial, the CDI needle will stay constant in the center. Next, you are flying outbound from the VOR. When you are flying outbound from the VOR, you are flying away from the VOR. So the indication given here will be FR, which is from indication. So now this is a complete table diagram which is 090 OBS setting put from indication and the needle in the center. So this makes a complete example. Next, let's say this is your VOR. Your aircraft is on radial 090, but in this case, aircraft is flying outbound from the VOR, but it is somewhere to the left of the radial 090. So let's say there were some winds on your flight path from the right hand side, and this winds push the aeroplane from radial 090 center line to the left hand side. So previously we were correctly on the radial, then there were some right crosswinds which pushed our aeroplane to the left hand side. Now what was the setting given in the OBS selector? It was 090. So this is your OBS which has 090 in here. Okay, now we are to the left hand side. We are flying away from the VOR and we are on the left hand side of radial 090. So let's say we might be on radial 087, 086, 088, anything less than 090. So as a result of that, you have put 090. Now the CDI needle will not remain in the center like here, because here it was in the center because we were correctly established on 090. Here the CDI needle will move to the left hand side. Okay, the aeroplane has moved to the left hand side, and as a result the CDI needle will move to the right hand side. The CDI needle will move to the right hand side, telling you that you have deviated, that the pilot has deviated the left of radial 090, and therefore correct this error, to correct this error, the pilot should follow CDI needle which has which has moved the right, which has moved to the right. So if the CDI needle moves to the right, you will also turn your aircraft to the right hand side. If CDI needle moves left, you also turn your aircraft to left hand side. Okay. Now in this case, the job of the pilot will be to turn his aircraft heading to the left hand side, to the right hand side. And he will keep turning his aircraft to the right and fly a particular heading. Let's say he will turn his aircraft 30 degrees right or 60 degrees right. Once he does that, he will follow that particular heading until he intercepts or he crosses this radial 0900. The moment he crosses the radial 0900, this same CDI needle, this same CDI needle, what will it happen? What will it do? It will come back in the center. It will come back in the center position. So as the pilot starts approaching this radial 0900 after taking a right turn, this CDI needle will become activated and it will start moving towards left hand side. Okay, from the right hand side to the left hand side, and on radial 0900 it will become center. Okay, in a center position it will get established in the center position. So even before you reach radial 0900, you should again start correcting your heading, okay, so that you may not overshoot this and fly on the other side of radial 0900. So when the CDI needle is very close to the central dot, start correcting your heading again and then adjust your heading so as to fly radial 0900 outbound. So this is another possibility of CDI indication. Similarly, if aircraft deviates to the right of the radial 0900, so the CDI needle will move to the left hand side, left of the center. Okay, telling you that you have deviated to the right of the center line and the radial 0900 which you have selected in the OBS selector falls to your left hand side. Okay, so if you deviate to the right hand side, the CDI needle moves to the left hand side and then your job will be to follow the CDI needle. If it goes left, go that much amount of left, intercept or cross the radial 0900 which is your goal you have put in the OBS selector, and then fly the OBS setting 0900, keeping the CDI needle in the center. So this. Now so far we have checked the example where we are flying on a particular radial and we are flying outbound from a VOR station. So what are the steps when you are flying outbound from the VOR station? I will take a new slide. So the first step when you are flying away from the station is that you should put the OBS setting. You should put the OBS setting in the OBS selector. So if you're flying a particular radial of 0900, so if you're flying a particular radial of 0900, so you will put 0900 in the setting. After that, you will check whether the CDI needle is center or not. Okay, you will check whether the CDI needle is center or not. And then you will also check to and from indication. If you are flying outbound, you should get from indication. The CDI needle should remain center provided you are on the center line. Now this is your VOR, okay, and this is the same radial 090. Now you are flying on this radial 090. You are flying on radial 090. Okay, I'm just telling you that you're flying on this radial. I'm not saying yet whether you're flying outbound or homebound. So you are somewhere on this radial 090. Now I'm telling you that you're flying inbound or you're flying homebound, meaning you're flying towards the VOR station. You're flying towards the VOR station. So this is the diagram. In the previous example, we were flying outbound. Okay, so now you're flying towards the VOR station. So Job of a radial is that radial to take you away from a station. A radial always takes you away from a station. But you can use this same radial to come towards your VOR station. So it's like a road, okay, on the ground. You can travel on that road and go outbound, meaning you can go away from your home to your office. You can use the same road and follow that road and come back to your home from office. So the same road can be used to for traveling to and fro. The same way this radial over here, this same radial can be used to travel outbound from a station, can also be used to travel inbound towards a station, right? But what procedure is to be followed when you are flying inbound towards a station? Because the primary use of UR is to fly outbound. But when you start flying cross country or for your IFR flights from one place to another place, you will be transitioning from one VOR to another VOR to another VOR. So when this transition happens, you will be flying, let's say you are flying outbound from one particular VOR. When you transition to the next VOR, you will be flying inbound towards that next VOR. Okay, so since this outbound, inbound will keep on happening. So that's why we should also know the of procedure to be followed when flying inbound towards a particular station. So now this is your OBS selector. Okay, this is your OBS selector. Now whenever you fly inbound towards a station, you should put the reciprocal, you should put the reciprocal bearing you are flying on. In this case, you are flying on radial 090. You are flying on radial 090. The reciprocal is radial 270. The reciprocal of this is radial 270. So now you are flying inbound towards this VOR. So when you fly inbound towards this VOR, you will transition from radial 090 to radial 270. You will transition from radial 090, okay, overfly this VOR. You will overfly this VOR and then you will automatically now come to the opposite side of the VOR, which is your radial 270 side, and then start flying on this radial 270 outbound from the VOR. As long as you were on radial 090, you were flying inbound towards VOR. Oh, after overflying the VOR, you will now fly outbound from this same VOR. So whenever you're flying homebound towards a particular station, the setting that you must put in the OBS selector should be the reciprocal of the radial. Reciprocal of the radial you are flying on currently. Now currently we are on radial 090. If we keep flying on this radial 090, sooner or later we will reach a VOR station, overfly that and automatically transition to the opposite radial 270. So therefore, when you are flying towards a station, you should put the OBS setting which sooner or later you will transition to. So in this case, reciprocal of 090 is 270. Okay, meaning you are going towards 270 radial, right? From radial 090, you are going towards radial 270. Next, when you put radial 270, although you are flying on radial 090, what indication you will get? You will get two indication. You will get two indication in the OBS selector. Now, when you are flying outbound from a station and you put radial 090 here, you get prom indication because that is the correct method. Flying outbound, put the radial you are flying outbound, the radial, and then as a result of that, you get prom indication, meaning you're going away from the station. Flying inbound, you put the radial, the reciprocal radial. Okay, so you get the indication, two indication. Okay, so that is the correct way of VOR, operating a VOR. Okay, and we call this normal sensing. We call this normal sensing of VOR. That this is the normal way of using VOR. Okay, so when you are flying inbound, the correct way is to get two indication here. You will only get two indication when you put radial 270 in the OBS selector. If you put radial 090, thinking that you are situated on radial 090, and you put 090 here, you will get prom indication, not to indication. And when you get prom indication, the CDI needle will behave according to that. So now I will show you the working of CDI needle. So let's say there are two possibilities in front of us. This is your VOR, this is your yeah. So I'm drawing a VOR station on both sides, radial 090. Always draw the reciprocal radial 270, 270. Okay, so we are flying inbound. We are flying inbound towards this VOR. Towards this VOR. The center line of radial 070. Okay, we are flying inbound towards this VOR. So the correct way, I will show you the correct way. So the correct way in the OBS selector is to put bearing 270. As a result of that, you get two indication and the CDI needle stays in the center. CDI needle stays correctly in the center. The main important point here is to get two indication. Now, if your aeroplane goes to the right hand side, okay, it gets drifted to the right hand side somewhere here. Okay, when it gets drifted to the right hand side, so what indication will CDI needle show? What indication will CDI needle show? So we have put 270. The two indication stays like that. Now, going towards the VOR, our aeroplane has drifted to the right hand side. What setting have we put? 270 setting. Now 270 is nothing but reciprocal of 090. So we can go or reach radial 270 only and only when we fly radial 090. So we have to stay constantly, maintain the radial 090 center line and then overfly VOR, and then and only then we will transition to radial 270. But if we go to the right hand side, get drifted right hand side, the CDI needle will move to the left hand side. Instead of staying in the center, the CDI needle will automatically move to the left hand side. Why? Because our track, which is radial 270, reciprocal of 090, is to the left hand side of our current position. Okay, so we have to follow the CDI needle. If the CDI needle goes to the left, you go to the left. If the CDI needle goes to the right, you go to the right. So if aircraft gets shifted to the right hand side, the CDI needle will move in the left hand side. You turn your aircraft left, get back to your radial 090, fly that radial 090 straight to the VOR, and then overflight and then go to the other side of the VOR, which is your radial 270. Other possibility, if your aircraft is deviated or gets drifted to its left hand side, if your aircraft gets drifted to its left hand side due to some crosswinds, what will happen? It is to the left hand side of radial 090, right? So as a result, the CDI needle will move to the right hand side. The CDI needle will move to the right hand side. You that as a pilot now you should turn right so that you cross or you intercept radial 090 and then fly that radial 090. So this whole performance of OBS selector is called normal sensing. Why normal? Because in daily life we follow this particular procedure when we are flying inbound. This is normally what should happen so that it is good for safety. Why? Because if the CDI needle goes left, you go left. If the CDI needle goes right, you go right. Okay, so there is no much thinking involved. All you have to do is follow the CDI needle. Like in the case of turn and slip indicator, you follow the ball. If the if it is slipping, okay, the ball will move inside of the turn. So you, if the ball goes left, you press the left rudder paddle. If the aeroplane starts skidding, the ball will be thrown towards the right hand side, and as a result, you will press the right rudder and then establish a coordinated flight. So similarly, in this case, in normal sensing, if the CDI needle moves left, you go left. If it moves right, you go right. Now the opposite of it is reverse sensing. The opposite of it is reverse sensing. Over here the same reverse sensing, opposite. Now the example remains the same. We are flying on radial 090. We are going inbound towards the VOR. Now over here in the OBS selector, I have told you here the correct way is to put 270. If you are going inbound, put the opposite radial. Going outbound, put the same radial, not the reciprocal. Reciprocal only in the case of flying inbound. Now in this case, if a pilot makes a mistake of thinking that since he is established on radial 090 and flying on radial 090 inbound, so he puts radial 090. If he does that, he will get CDI indications which are reverse in sense. Meaning what? If you put radial 090, you will first get from indication. Okay, from indication, and the CDI needle will now remain in the center. As of now, the CDI needle will remain in the center because you are correctly established on the center line of this radial 090. But the indication what you are getting is from indication. But the indication that you are expected to get is to indication because you are flying towards the station, not from the station. Okay, you are flying towards it, not away from it. Now let's say, and why are you getting from indication is because radial 090. In the very first slide I told you, the job of radials is to take you away from the station. Okay, so flying, so we, if you put 090 in this OBS selector, the viewer thinks that you intend to fly radial 090 and following that radial 090, you want to fly outbound from the station. Okay, so the primary job of radials, when you fly a radial, you fly outbound. So this is what viewer thinks. It doesn't know that you are actually flying inbound. Okay, so irrespective of your heading, the radial that you put in this OBS selector is what information the VOR OBS selector will give to you. Okay, so it is very important that you put the correct indication in the OBS selector. So if you put 090, what will happen if you put 090? You will fly this 090 radial and you will go outbound. Okay, so that's why you're getting from indication, but you're flying towards. So what happened? What should you put it to get to indication? You should put 270. Now let's talk about the crosswind corrections. In this case, let's say you have drifted to the right hand side. Okay, this is your VOR radial 090. Now when your aircraft drifts to the right hand side, radial 090 going towards the VOR, what should your CDI indication show? The CDI indication will show left hand side. It is expected to show that. Okay, if you deviate right side, so the CDI should move left side, telling you to fly left. If you deviate left hand side of radial 090, the CDI needle should move right, telling you to go or fly right hand side. But if you put radial 090 in the OBS selector like this, the CDI needle, instead of going left hand side, it will go towards the right hand side. It will go towards the right hand side. Now why is that? You have put 090 in the OBS selector. You have put 090 in the OBS selector. 090 radial takes you outbound. Takes you outbound. So the CDI indications, left indication, right indications, are with respect to your aircraft flying outbound. Are with respect, CDI indications are are with respect to your aircraft flying outbound. Are with respect to your aircraft flying outbound. So you have to imagine, in reality, you are flying inbound towards the viewer. So all your left and right indications will be respect to that. So if you are flying inbound towards the viewer, this will be your left hand side. This will be your right hand side. But the same thing, if you are flying away from the viewer, okay, you are flying away from the viewer. So in that case, this will be your left hand side and this will be your right hand side. In case you are flying towards the viewer, this will be your left and this will be your right. Understood? So flying away from the viewer, this is your left, this is your right. Flying towards the viewer, that is your right side and this is your left side. So in this case, this example that we are considering, we have put 090 in the OBS selector. And therefore the CDI indications will be respect to that 090 radial, which is the outbound radial. 090 radial, which is the outbound radial. So your aircraft is to the left of 090 radial. Is to the left of 090 radial. Flying outbound, I will take a new slide. Flying outbound, aircraft is to the right of, correction, is to the left of 090 radial. Okay, so in this example again, I have drawn the VOR. This is radial 090, and instead of putting the aircraft correctly established on radial 090, I have drawn that aircraft. I have drawn that aircraft to the this position away from radial 090. Okay, and in the OBS selector, you put 090. So all your CDI indications will be respect to that. So 090 is an outbound radial. So flying outbound, this becomes your left hand side. This becomes your right hand side. Right? So now flying outbound. So 090 you have put. Therefore CDI needle will be respect to this flying outbound. So now the CDI needle will think your aircraft is to the left hand side. Aircraft is to the left hand side of 090 radial, outbound radial, and therefore the CDI needle will move to the right hand side. Therefore the CDI needle will move to the right hand side. Okay, and the indication shown in your to from indicator will still be from indication, since 090 is what you have put. So this is called reverse sensing. You are flying towards the viewer. You are flying towards the viewer. Was your goal to fly towards the viewer. Now CDI needle tells you to fly right. So if you fly right, if you follow the CDI needle, instead of going to the left hand side, the radial 090 is to your left, the VOR is to your left. So instead of flying towards that, instead of correcting that situation, you will fly more towards right hand side. You will fly more towards right hand side. Instead of going left, you will go right hand side if you follow the CDI needle. So that's why this is called reverse sensing. So in case you put 090, if you put 090 instead of 270, even if you're flying homebound, you will get reverse sensing. Okay, and therefore the pilot, instead of flying or following the CDI needle, in case of reverse sensing, you do not follow the CDI. The pilot doesn't follow the CDI needle. Okay, he will not follow the CDI needle. He will do the opposite. He will do the opposite of what the CDI tells him to. He will do opposite of what CDI tells him to do. So if the CDI goes right, the pilot should turn his aircraft left. If the CDI needle moves left, the pilot should turn his aircraft right hand side. So this is the case of reverse sensing. So a quick recap. Normal sensing, now in case of flying outbound, in this example, in case of flying outbound, very simple. You're flying outbound on radius 090. The job of radius is to take you away from a VOR. So if you're flying outbound from radius 090, put OBS selector 090 from indication. The CDI needle initially stays in the center like this if you are correctly established on the radial. In case of crosswind conditions, you get drifted. Let's say you get drifted to the left hand side or right hand side. Accordingly, the CDI needle will give you the solution to that error. If you get drifted to the left hand side, okay, flying outbound, this will be your left hand side, this will be your right hand side. So if you get drifted to the left hand side, the CDI needle will move to the right hand side. Depends how much you have drifted. By that amount, the CDI needle will also move. Okay. So if you get drifted left hand side, the CDI needle moves right. So to correct that situation, you will have to turn your aircraft heading somewhat to the right hand side, intercept this radial and then fly along that radial. Make sure you don't overshoot that radial, okay, and then fly on the other side of the radial. Okay, that is also not right. Next, similarly, if you get drifted to the right hand side, the needle will switch or move towards the left hand side. This is called normal sensing. Okay, this is called normal sensing. Following the CDI indications is normal sensing. So you are getting the information or you are getting an output depending on the correct input that you have put. Now the second scenario is you are flying along a particular radial and you are flying inbound towards the VOR. So the correct procedure I have told you when you are flying inbound towards the VOR, to put the reciprocal radial. So if you, even though you are situated currently on radial 090, since you are flying inbound, you will put opposite of 090 270. When you do that, you will get your to and from indications and your CDI indications in normal sense. If you do that, you will get the indications in the normal sense, and therefore the instrument becomes reliable, and there is less possibility of pilot making any judgment or any other pilot flying errors. If you don't do that, you may get reverse sensing. How is that possible? So instead of putting 270 in the OBS setting, you put 090. When you put 090 OBS setting, the CDI needle will move or give indication with respect to that 090 radial. 090 radial will take you away from the viewer. So all the CDI indications that are left and right indications will be with respect to flying away from a viewer, when in reality you are actually flying towards the viewer. So you should be getting indications which are proportionate to flying towards the viewer instead of indications which are meant for a situation in which you are flying away from the viewer, right? So in normal sensing, In normal sensing, you are flying towards the VOR. So you may be on radial 090, accepted that fact, but the correct way is to put 270. So the CDI indications will move left or right in normal sense. So all you have to do is just follow the CDI indications, not use your mind and follow the opposite of that. In case of reverse sensing, you have to do the opposite of what CDI says, because you have put because you have thought since you are on of magnetic heading, NDB ADF indication and VOR indication. So the arrow filled with blue color is your VOR needle, and the hollow arrow is your ADF needle. Now the thing you have to remember with RMI is that RMI, which is your radio magnetic indicator, only concerned about QDM, which is magnetic track towards station. Magnetic track towards the station. QDM is magnetic track towards the station. Okay, so VOR. So this head of the VOR will always point towards QDM, or point towards the track, or point towards the VOR. Okay, the head of the needle points towards the VOR. Tail is your QDR, that is the track away from magnetic track away from VOR. Same goes with NDB ADF needle. The head of the needle will always point towards QDM directly, which is track towards the NDB. The tail is QDR, track away from NDB. Track away from NDB. So this is how it works. Okay. So RMI directly gives you a QDM indication. So in case of NDB ADF sums, we are always used to associating the word ADF with relative bearing indication. So the ADF, automatic direction finding equipment, directly gives to you the relative bearing. Okay, the direction in which the needle of the automatic direction finder points is your relative bearing. But in case of RMI, the word ADF is to be associated with QDM. So we will look at the sums. So it is RMI. In case of RMI, if the question states ADF reading is so and so, so that ADF reading is not relative bearing but QDM, provided the question is about RMI. So this is the basics. Now let's go to our question. The question was, aircraft VOR is tuned to a station. When 049 is selected on OBS, the deviation bar is centered. So let's draw a VOR. There is radial 049. Okay. There is OBS selector. One thing for sure, the CDI needle is center. So we will draw a center needle. Next. To and from indicates to indication. The to and from indicates to indication, which is very important. So next thing, what is the radial of aircraft and what heading should aircraft fly? So very easy. So now you are getting a to indication. You are getting a to indication. Now there are two possibilities. This is radial 049. Now the reciprocal of 049 is 180 plus 49, which is 220. 9. So now if you fly radial 049, when aircraft flies along this radial 049, it is supposed to fly outbound. Okay, it is supposed to fly outbound. Next is it is supposed to fly outbound. When you fly outbound, you get a from indication. Now, when you fly inbound along this radial 049, inbound on radial 049, you will get a 2 indication. If you are flying outbound, in the OBS selector, you will have to put 049 and you will get a from indication. If you are flying inbound, the previously whatever I have explained, you will have to put 229 in the OBS selector and you will get a 2 indication. But according to the question, what you have put in the question, you have put 049 in the OBS. You have selected 049 in the OBS. So that's from that we eliminate this option. We eliminate this option and this option. Both the options. Why? If we put two, we get if we put two indication, we can get two indication also with 229 radial in the OBS selector. But we have put 049, not 229. So this option is eliminated, and we have put 049. So if we put 049, we can also get from indication along with two indication. Okay, but the question states this problem. You have two indication with 049. Here we are getting to 049, but we are getting from indication. That means nowhere on this side of the VOR is your aeroplane situated. So you will get two indication on 049 only and only when you are flying or you are situated on radial 229, you are flying towards the VOR. So that means when you are on radial 229, there are two possibilities. You can fly this radial 229 and get a from indication away from the VOR, or you can be on radial 229 and follow that radial inbound towards the VOR. In that case, if you are flying inbound towards the VOR, so you will have to put 049, the reciprocal of that, okay, because you are flying inbound, and as a result you will get two indication. Okay, so even this third option I am eliminating, and this is the correct option. So the question states, whatever question gave in words, I have drawn it. Two indication, OBS selected 049. With 049 selected, you can either go outbound or you can go inbound. Now outbound is not the case because it's towards, so only this one option remains, going towards the VOR with 049 set. Okay, so uh, answer will be the heading. Now the heading that you will need to fly to go towards the VOR is what heading? You will have to fly straight 049 heading. Heading of straight 049. And the OBS is 049. OBS will also be 049. So this is the final answer to your question. The aircraft is situated on radial 229 and the heading to reach the station is 049. Okay, so aircraft is situated on radial 229. Okay, being on that radial 229er, it is flying inbound VOR, and therefore we have put 049er, not 229er. If we had put 229er, we would have got reverse sensing. Okay, because 229er radial is meant for flying outbound. Flying homebound, you will have to put radial 049 until you reach VOR. When you overfly VOR and transition to 049 radial, this 049 stays constant, the to and from indication will start flickering over the VOR station, and once you overfly and transition to the next radial, the to indication will automatically switch to from indication. So this is how you solve question